Hello and welcome to Relatable Code. In the previous video, we talked about if-else statements in Kotlin, and as we saw, these could get a little messy. So in this video, I'm going to show you a powerful tool in Kotlin called the when statement that will make our code more readable and concise. So let's get started. So what are these when statements and how can we use them? Well, if you know other programming languages, when statements are very similar to switch statements, and they even offer a lot more flexibility. And if you don't, that's okay, because we're going to cover them from scratch. Okay, so we have this code, which could get a lot bigger and messier when we add some more conditions. So let's see how we can make it more readable with these when statements. How can we do that? We would write when, we would open our curly braces, and we would start with our conditions. What's our first condition that we're checking in this if-else statement? It should call customer. So what we do here, we write should call customer, space, and we write the arrow signal, which is this. It's a minus followed by a greater than sign. Okay, so now we have a condition, and we want to know what action we would perform when this condition is true. That would be this, the print line statement. Okay, so copy that, paste it here, and that's it for the first condition. Of course, we will test it, and I'll show you how it works. Second condition, it's number of days with overdue book less than 7, and account balance less than 10. It's another condition, so copy that, paste it underneath should call customer. And again, we need to provide an action to be performed when this condition is true. So we write the same arrow sign, and we copy prepare to call customer, like that. And with respect to the default else statement, this is how you write it using the when statement or the when block of code. You write else and also another arrow sign, and you write at the end the action to be performed in this else statement. Okay, when you look at it like when should call customer, this is the action I want to perform. When number of days with overdue book is less than 7 and account balance is less than 10, this is the action I want to perform. Okay, it's a lot cleaner than this if-else statement, and it's a lot more concise and readable as well. Okay, and it's a lot more flexible, which is a very powerful way to write code in Kotlin. So let's comment out the if-else statement and run our code again, or for the first time in this video. We ran our code, it's compiling, and don't call the customer. Don't call the customer because according to our when statements, should call customer is false, and number of days with overdue book and the other condition is also false. Okay, very similar to what we did with this statement in the previous video. This is how you utilize the when statement in Kotlin, or at least one of the ways to utilize it. Now I'll show you another way. Okay, so let's say I want to take some actions depending on what book the customer currently has borrowed. Okay, how can I do that using the when statement? I would write when, and instead of opening the curly braces as we did in the previous statement, we would open the parentheses and we would write borrowed book, and then we would open our curly braces. In this case, I'm making several checks on borrowed book. Okay, and contrary to the previous when statement where I didn't make a check on something certain, instead I made some checks on several random conditions, if you want. Okay, which is why we wrote it like that. But in this case, I want to study some certain actions to be taken depending on the customer's borrowed book. Okay, so when borrowed book is an empty string, for example, which means the customer currently has no book. I want to take an action, so I write the arrow sign again, and this time I print line, this customer currently has no books. Okay, I want to add another condition or another check if the customer has a math book, for example. So I would write math book, arrow, print line. In this case, this customer currently has a math book. Same thing goes for science book, print line, this customer currently has a science book. And if none of these three conditions are true, we need to write an else statement. So we write else, print line. This is the default case. You can print anything you want. We can print something like no data available. Okay, that's how you do checks for a string variable in Kotlin, and if I were to write this in an if-else statement, it would be a lot bigger than that. Okay, it would be something like this: if borrowed book equals empty string, print line this statement. I'm showing you the equivalent of this one block of code and the if-else statement. Else, if, this is gonna be a long video. Bear with me. What am I doing? Borrowed book. Okay, equals math book. Print line this. Else if borrowed book equals science book. You can see how time consuming this can be. Print line. Else, finally, we would have this print line statement. So, which one would you prefer? I would definitely prefer to read this in my code. Okay, it's a lot easier to read, so you can just go like one borrowed book is an empty string. This is what I do. One borrowed book is math book. This is what I do, and so on and so forth. Okay. That's how you check for a variable in the one statement and a string variable in precise. What if I wanted to check for an integer's value? This is how I would do it. Let's just delete this very ugly block of code. I really hope you use one statements instead of that block of code in your code. Let's try to do something for integers. So one integer we have in particular, an interesting one, is number of days with overdue book. Okay, let's say I want to take an action when the number of days with overdue book is between 0 and 7. How would I write that? I would go something like in 0, 7, and the action I would perform in that case, and I'll show you this annotation now. This customer is less than 7 days late to return the book. Okay, and as you can see in IntelliJ, because it's a very smart IDE and it's one of the best actually, one number of days, you can consider this in between, okay, in between 0 and 7. IntelliJ provided you with these less than or equal after the 0 and the less than or equal as well before the 7. okay, which makes it a lot easier to read actually. So when the number of days with overdue book is in between 0 and 7, this is the action I would take in this case, okay? And if it's, for example, between 8 and 14, I would, well, let's write a print line statement for this case. This customer is more than 1 week late, but less than, for example, 2 weeks late. Okay. And the default else statement, I encourage you to write an else statement in every one block of code you write. Okay, just to cover all the cases so that you don't have certain errors in your code. Else, number of days with overdue book, for example, is not in this range. Okay, let's run that block of code at the top to the function main. Okay, this customer currently has no books. This comes from this block of code, and with respect to this block of code, this customer is less than 7 days late to return the book. Why is that? Control left click on number of days with overdue book, because it's 5. Okay, so it's between 0 and 7, and this block of code gets executed. Another note I want you to know with respect to when statements, sometimes the action to be taken when this condition is true might not be a single line of code. What would you do in that case? You can write curly braces here after the arrows sign. How would you do that? Select your code and shift left curly brace. Now you have a block of code to be executed when this condition has this value. Okay, I hope that's clear. In this block of code you can write more than one line of code, so you can print out anything else you want, and it could be very handy in the future. And now for your task. It's going to be one hell of a task. I want you to perform several checks and some actions to be taken for every condition. Okay, first I want you to check if this customer hasn't borrowed any book yet. So I think there's a variable total number of books borrowed for this case, and at the same time I want you to check if this customer has an account balance that's greater than 0. In this case, the customer has created an account in our library but hasn't borrowed any book yet. Okay, maybe we should call this customer and encourage him to borrow a book. And that's it for the first case. I wrote them in comments because there was no way I would memorize this. So for the second case, it's a triple condition check. Okay, first I want you to check if this customer has borrowed one or more books, and at the same time has been 7 or more days late to return the book. So that's our variable for that case. And at the same time has an account balance less than 10. In this case, we should call this customer and tell him that he is late and should return the book. Okay, for the third condition, or the third statement, it's also going to be a triple condition, but a little more complex. First, I want you to also check if this customer has borrowed one or more books, and at the same time doesn't have any overdue books. We have a variable for that. And at the same time I have a third condition, but this condition necessitates that one of these two conditions is true. Okay, the first one being this customer has no current borrowed book, or has an account balance greater than 20. Okay, this would be a little more complex than what we've covered, but don't worry about it. Everything will be clear after this. Take your time and do the assignment. Pause the video, and we will continue after that. So, how would we approach this monstrosity? Let's try to tackle it. In our case, we're not checking for a single variable, so we're going to use the one with curly braces. Okay, so what's the first condition? This customer hasn't borrowed any book yet, so we have a variable called total number of books borrowed. Okay, we're checking total number of books borrowed, that it's equal to 0, and at the same time this customer has an account balance greater than 0. Okay, a positive account balance, so and account balance greater than 0. In this case we use print line. Let's remind this customer to visit us, for example. Okay, now the first triple condition check. We're going to check if this customer has borrowed one or more books, so total number of books borrowed is greater than or equal to 1, and at the same time has been 7, you can say, or more days late to return the book. Don't worry if you didn't do it like that. That was my fault. And number of days with overdue book is greater than or equal to 7, and at the same time an account balance less than 10. Okay, account balance less than 10. Now for the action, call this customer to return the book. Okay, now for the third, I called it a triple condition check because I'll show you why. It starts the same way, one or more books borrowed, so let's just copy that, paste it, and doesn't have any overdue books. Third, that's not an and sign. And not has overdue books. And we have a third condition, which is a mixture of two other conditions. No current borrowed book or account balance greater than 20. How would we write that? It would require a combination of both the AND operator and our operator, but don't take it in a complex way. Here's how you can write it. Since I told you it's a triple condition check, first this one, then overdue books, and at the same time we can consider this a single condition, okay, because it's linked to the others by the AND operator. Okay, so we write and we open our parentheses. So we have no current borrowed book, which means borrowed book equal empty string, or account balance is greater than 20. I'm a madman. In this case, print line. Let's give this customer a coupon. Okay. Why did I consider this a triple condition? First condition, second condition, third condition. That's how I look at it. Okay. If it were only these two, I would also consider them, if you want, a single condition, because every OR operator requires only one of these two to be true. And what I mean by that is, for example, if this condition is true and this condition is true and this one is true as well, this statement will get triggered. Okay, and at the same time, if this one's true and this one's true and account balance is greater than 20, this statement will also get called. Okay, so that's two different cases, and only 3 of these 4 checks have to be valid for this statement to get triggered. Okay, I hope that wasn't too complex, and I'm going to show you a way to, if you want, tackle these kind of problems. So this is a very big check. What we can do is, for example, write var is eligible for coupon equal, copy that, and now you can write is eligible for coupon. Okay, that's the optimal way to approach when statements, and even that can be further optimized. How? You can do something like, for example, we can take this combination of conditions into a single variable. For example, var is ready for a new book, for example. And we can write this, we no longer need these parentheses. Now, instead of writing that, we would write of course, you have to write is ready for book before is eligible for coupon so that you can use it, because as of this line of code, you don't know anything called is ready for book, because in Kotlin and many other programming languages, this happens sequentially. Okay, so from top to bottom, we're going to cut this line and paste it right here, and now we're going to write is ready for a new book. Okay, and we can add something else as well, is ready for a new book and is eligible for a new book. So we can write var is eligible for a new book, and we can just copy these two into this. And I'm not stressing a lot on var and val for now, because I only want you to focus on one thing at a time. Okay, but if these don't change in the future, it's better that you change them to val. Okay, so we have is eligible for a new book. We cut these two conditions and we write is eligible for a new book. Okay, so now is eligible for a coupon. We'll check for two conditions at the same time. If total number of books borrowed is greater than or equal to 1, and if the customer is eligible for a new book. Okay, what is eligible for a new book? It necessitates two conditions as well. The customer shouldn't have any overdue books and should be ready to borrow a new book. Is ready for a new book is in itself a condition as follows. It necessitates that borrowed book is an empty string. The customer shouldn't have any current borrowed book, or the customer has an account balance greater than 20. Okay, these would all help us to create is eligible for coupon, so that we don't have that huge condition check. Okay, in the future you will start to think like this. It's okay if you find this very weird right now, because you're just starting out with Kotlin, but you will start to do this as you code more. Okay, and it's of course a better approach than writing the huge statement, and it just requires some time. What I want from you is to cover the basics. Really watch this video, focus on every aspect of it, and try to play around as well, run the application with different checks, change around some values, and really check how these conditions work. Okay, so in our case, let's give this customer a coupon. Okay, so this whole condition was true, which is why this print line statement was triggered. Okay? We covered some really ugly conditions, to say the least, but I hope it was clear, or at least how you should approach these kind of problems. If you found this clear, good job. It wasn't very straightforward, and if you didn't, that's okay. Rewind the video, watch these parts again, and really focus on every aspect of these conditions. Okay, these combinations that we're seeing here can or cannot happen in your production level application. In most cases, you would need some checks, some combinations of them. And I hope you really understood how when statements work. Okay? If you like my content and you find it to be relatable, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you in the future videos.